happening, folks? Today we are looking at French director Sebastian Vanecek's new creature feature, Infested. It stars Theo Christine and Sophia Le Saffre. The movie swept the 2023 film festival circuit, and the rest of we normal people got to see it quite recently in April of 2024. It looks as though the critics really enjoyed this movie, but the rest of us seem to be split right down the middle. So today we're going to break down the plot to see if we can figure out why some people are getting all tangled up in Infested's silky web, while other people think the movie bites, or it really bugs them. It bugs them. I probably should have said that one. I'm going to do myself some tidying up around here while you guys are checking out Act 1. Enjoy. The fuck? The movie opens somewhere in the Middle East, and a group of enterprising young entrepreneurs are raiding an underground spider's nest to package them up and send them off to pet stores and collectors back in the Western world. During this particular collection, a single spider pounces on one of the men, and being aware of what's to follow after a bite from this species, one of his colleagues puts him out of his misery with an abrupt act of violent kindness. After they've rounded up a healthy collection of spiders, of course. Then the opening credits play over a revealing an interesting montage showing us the trade path from initial collection of the spiders until their eventual resale. This story is kicked off by a spider purchased in Paris, France by Kaleb, played by Theo Christine. Kaleb's an exotic species enthusiast, and his bedroom collection would keep a lot of us from falling asleep ever again. Back at his rundown apartment complex in Paris, Kaleb lives with his sister, Manon, played by Lisa Nyarko. The siblings have been at each other's throats since the recent death of their mother left them all alone in the apartment. Kaleb is fed up with her constant home renovations, and Manon can't stand Kaleb's exotic species collection. Kaleb appears to be a positive influence around the complex. He holds other residents accountable for misbehaving and stealing, and those residents seem to respect him for doing so. And among many other things, one of Kaleb's side projects is selling hard-to-find running shoes. He's a perfectionist, and he insists on doing everything to the highest standard, even with the shoes. As a result, instead of selling a pair of shoes with a slightly damaged box, he converts the box into a temporary home for his newest spider acquisition. And as he's introducing the spider to its new home, every other creature in the room is immediately alerted to its presence. This is a subtle and very effective foreshadowing of things to come. And while Kaleb and a collection of other residents are partying down the hall, the new spider finds a weakness in the damaged box. When Kaleb comes home to check in on it, the empty box brings an ominous end to the first act. Infested seems to be off to a very good start because, like a lot of other great creature features, it's just keeping everything simple. Director Sebastian Vanecek was very smart to pick spiders because there was a massive pre-established audience for them. When you're afraid of spiders or any other creepy crawlies, you can gain a sense of control over the thing you fear by interacting with it from a safe distance. Also, the opening scene from the Middle East worked perfectly to show us how dangerous these specific spiders are without anybody having to tell us how dangerous these spiders are. And that means the movie is letting us use our brains. Also, our main character Kaleb has a good head on his shoulders. And that is going to go a long way towards keeping us engaged with him as he tries to figure out how to solve his newfound spider problem. That's exactly what I am going to be doing while you guys are enjoying the second act. A frantic search of the room proves fruitless in terms of the spider, but Kaleb does find an alarming quantity of egg sacs. The next morning, when Kaleb gets up to deliver a pair of sneakers, he finds the apartment full of his sister's friends, and it's obvious they're not all pals. The new owner of the shoes takes them home and throws them on immediately, only to find them infested with hundreds of fast-moving baby spiders. Back in the apartment, Kaleb enters into the next round of arguments with his sister's friends, and after he boots them out of his room, he blocks off the bottom of the door, thinking the original spider is still inside. Meanwhile, the man with the shoes isn't doing very well at all. As he tries phoning Kaleb, he's slowly taken over by whatever's worked its way into his system. Eventually, his dog's incessant barking draws the attention of the building's residents. Once they see what's inside, the police lock the place down and forbid everybody from leaving. Back in the apartment again, another argument kicks off while the gang insinuates Kaleb might have sold the victim drugs along with the shoes. Down in the basement, the building superintendent can't help but notice the abundance of a new silky sort of decoration. And as she gets stuck into cleaning them, we get an idea of the scale of the problem, which appears to have spread throughout the building via the ventilation ducts. And from this point forward in the story, if you have a fear of spiders, you're going to find this film very challenging to watch. Not just because the loud arguing is starting to get distracting, but because these spiders are hyper-realistic, super quick, and everywhere. Once they've sealed the bathroom off, everyone turns their attention to the obvious cause of the problem. And after denying it initially, Kaleb eventually spills his guts about the spider purchase. And when one of the lads opens the old shoebox to look at the original cocoon, he finds it spilling over with spiders who are considerably larger. Back down in the basement again, our favorite superintendent is shocked by the staggering quantity of webs and dead spiders. And as my personal nominee for the bravest woman alive, she takes out as many of them as she can with 2 cans of bug spray. But apparently, she missed a big one. This brings us to the midpoint in the story where the gang's gonna need to make a move. The police aren't letting anybody leave the building, and given how quickly the problem is growing in size, they decide they'll have to fight back against the spiders. The decision also marks a transition in the group dynamic, as they finally recognize they'll have to start working together as a team. And hopefully that'll put a damper on the bickering before it drowns out the fact there's a giant spider outbreak in the building. While the gang's going door to door warning everyone of the situation, a neighbor in an adjacent apartment learns how quickly these spiders grow and how many of them there are now. And in the next apartment, Kaleb discovers giant spiders coming out of one of his neighbor's heads. And as per the runtime in the movie, we enter into the discovery phase of the story when the characters do some internet research to confirm what we've been watching happen throughout the building. And then a quick montage shows us the extent of death and devastation throughout the building. Hardly any residents are left alive, there are very few safe spaces left, and the spiders have grown gigantic and impossibly fast. After exhausting every other possibility, they realize the only option is to make a break for the outside world. The only problem is there's only one hallway left to get them into the parking garage, and it happens to be this one. They funnel through the corridor together in small groups as Kaleb's sister stays behind to keep the light on as it operates on a timer. Eventually, they make it through, but when they do, the police force them to retreat back down into the corridor, where Jordy, one of the boys, gets engulfed. Mathis, another of the boys, is also bitten during the retreat, but he manages to get back to safety with the rest of them. And while the gangs hold up, they're forced to listen to Jordy's screams as he's eaten alive in the next room. I can't play the audio for you, but I will say at this stage in the film, Jordy's screaming during his final moments is like choir music compared to the girls in the group, and it's absolutely starting to get inside my head. They make a final escape attempt a few floors up in the building where they're met by the police who violently subdue them. Kaleb's knocked out as he's watching his sister being thrown to the floor, and the screamings literally cause me to turn the volume down on my speakers. When he comes to, they are tied up in the parking garage and Kaleb's screaming kicks off immediately again. When the teen's argument with the police proves pointless and Kaleb can scream no more, for now, Mathis decides the only way forward is to force the police to focus on something other than them. And seeing as he's already been bitten, he rushes back into the building, leaving the door wide open for the police to have to deal with. This selfless act of taking one for the team in hopes his friends will get away to safety marks the final transition in the story and the end of Act 2. Heading into the third and final act now, they have cranked up the tension nicely. The entire building is saturated with giant, aggressive, ugly, fast as fook spiders. Escaping through the building is no longer an option. The police have arrived, but they are proving as effective as the superintendent lady's bug spray. And with just this final act to go, if you can ignore all this screaming, let's see if they can wrap this whole thing up for us. With the entire area completely overrun and the police scrambling to save themselves, the gang's forced to duck and bob their way through the madness and into the nearest available car. And once they're in the temporary safety of the back of a van, the brother and sister team apologize to each other for the way they've both acted since their mother passed away. And that brings their little story arc to a nice timely close. And all they have to do now is get out of the parking garage, which would have been much easier if it wasn't for the pesky giant mutant spider blocking the door. Kaleb puts his faith in his understanding and love for the animals. He exits the car and has them turn out the headlights. Once the spider realizes it's not being threatened, it scurries away. And the story wraps up with the demolition of the building and a demonstration Kaleb still loves spiders. In my opinion, in spite of a potentially weak ending, this movie was tripped up by one thing and one thing only. The screaming itself wasn't the problem. Screaming is a big part of what gets our nervous systems active during a horror movie. Screaming creates tension in the atmosphere. It also brings the terror from the movie out into the audience. We even respect a good screamer with titles like Scream Queen. But Infested had all of the characters screaming all of the time, and they were all very good at screaming. And you know what they say about too much of anything. Beyond that issue, Infested got off to a very quick start. It had a relentless pace. There was a wide enough range of characters to keep things varied. Our main character in Kaleb was a likable chap, and his motivations were clear and very understandable. But to me, this movie's strength is in its visual and audio effects. Perhaps with the exception of the final spider in the closing scene, the infestation itself was completely believable. I haven't got an issue with spiders myself, but I absolutely found myself looking into every dark corner of my house for hours after watching this movie. The obvious comparison you might draw would be 1990s Arachnophobia, which was equally unsettling for audiences with and without a healthy fear of spiders. But the main difference here is Infested's brutality. It completely lacks any of the levity that helped make Arachnophobia such a huge hit with a big wide audience. To me, Arachnophobia will always be an enjoyable, well-made thriller, but I'll be tucking the Infested Blu-ray into the drawer where it belongs with the rest of my horror collection.
Guys, I'm up here. Don't worry about me at all. I've got them exactly where I want them. And besides, it kind of feels like wearing lingerie. I would really appreciate your thoughts on this movie. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Until next time. It's me, Jonny, from that video you just loved, and I know you loved it because this book I read told me if I constantly say that to you, you will start to believe it's true. So thanks for loving that video you just watched. You're also going to love this next video as soon as you click on it. Click on it.